therapy historically has been interpreted as a self-ego oriented methodology, and therefore has come up and faced resistance from folks in the church, because if in the church the idea is that you're not the most important thing, God is the most important thing. And so the integration for me is highlighting the fact that they can coexist, that therapy is simply another tool that God uses in the earth realm to help his people be well. And if we didn't need people in the earth, God would have never created the earthen vessel to begin with.
Welcome to another episode of the Sweet Mother Podcast, a podcast that exists to tell the stories of powerful women as told by the daughters they've left behind. I'm your host, Soko Shalanke. The holidays are approaching. Thanksgiving is just around the corner. What is traditionally a season of merriment, joy, hope, and anticipation for so many people can actually be the most difficult time of year for those who've lost a loved one. But there is help and support out there. And I think this is a great time of year to have a discussion about therapy and grief. So I interviewed Dr. Simmons. Dr. Simmons is a licensed mental health counselor and the owner and executive director of the Collective Wellness Institute in Tampa Bay, Florida. In part one of our interview, we focused on therapy and discussed some of the barriers to seeking out therapy for those in the Black, immigrant, and Christian communities. In the second part of our interview, we addressed the process of grieving a loved one, especially around the holidays, and the benefits of grief counseling. My hope is that these episodes will be beneficial not just to those who've lost a mother, but also to those who are grieving the loss of anyone or anything near and dear to them. Okay, so welcome to today's show. Today is a little different. Rather than interviewing a woman about the loss of her mother or about the life and legacy of her mother, I'm actually here today with Dr. Simmons, who is a therapist in the Tampa Bay area. Dr. Simmons is the owner of the Collective Wellness Institute in Tampa, Florida. Welcome, Dr. Simmons.
Thank you so much for having me. It is an absolute pleasure to be a part of this project.
Could you tell our audience something just about your own family life, personal life? I know that you're married.
Yes, I am.
And I think you have kids.
I do.
Grandkids?
Yeah, I have kids and grandkids.
Oh, wow.
And spiritual kids too.
Oh, wow.
So a little bit about me personally. Yes, I am married to a pastor here in the area where he is an associate pastor. We don't own our own church or lead our own church. We have 4 children, 2 biological children, 2 adopted children, 3 grandchildren, and like I said, a host of spiritual children.
Yeah.
We are from New York. Both of us were born and raised there. And we were both born to parents who had a great deal of their own challenges, physical and mental health.
Oh, wow.
And so it is that landscape that created an opportunity for us to look to change the course of wellness in our family and for our communities.
What is your educational background?
Yes. So I have my master's and my PhD from Regent University, which is a premier Christian university in Virginia. My master's is in community counseling, and my PhD is in counselor education and supervision.
Oh, wow. So you train other therapists or other counselors with that degree?
You got it.
Oh, okay.
I love to do that. I supervise individuals who have completed their master's work and they're working on their hours to be fully licensed. I am a placement for individuals who are in the graduate coursework and they need like a practicum or an internship.
Okay.
And I'm a mentor for folks who are already licensed, who want to figure out how to do private practice, or they just feel like they need a little additional support because this work can be a little isolating.
Yeah.
I don't teach in the university level.
Yeah.
I prefer not to do that, but I absolutely love training in community.
And what would you consider to be your specialty in counseling?
And that's changed over time.
Okay.
But my personal specialty in this moment, I would say 2 areas. One, Christian integration. And the one that I've been spending the most time recently is marriage.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's really important.
Mm-hmm.
The statistics on divorce in our community are disappointing.
To say the least. To say the least. But there's some really thriving marriages, and so we look for ways to keep them healthy and ways to get others even healthier.
Yeah. When I looked at your bio, I see that you are trained as a ropes course instructor and that you use that in your therapy. How do you use that?
Okay, so this is fun stuff. So yes, my husband and I were both trained as ropes course instructors in Virginia. And the specific way that we use that is when we actually work with couples. We create activities for couples to grow together, build together, improve their communication, improve their problem solving skills. And so we're actually having one on Monday. We do what we call play dates. And so they're like date nights, but they're filled with challenges.
Oh, wow.
For couples to actually practice the skills that we talk about, either in therapy or in other platform that we use with couples. So
that sounds like fun.
It is fun. It is fun.
I should come.
If you
can. You mentioned Christian integration. What is that?
So I don't know if it's obvious. Sometimes I feel like it can be obvious when we hear from folks in our community. You can hear the volume, their voice, and you can assume or sometimes assume that someone is a particular ethnic background.
Yeah.
For the purposes of the podcast, I'm African American.
Yeah.
And historically, our faith has been instrumental in the resiliency that our communities have experienced. When challenges arose historically, the community relied on the church for their support, their help, their advocacy. And that's still a great thing. However, over the years, as we have become more open to advances in community, advances in services, advances in even our socioeconomic status, there's been a little bit of a roadblock in getting folks in our community, and particularly the faith community, to embrace this idea about therapy. Therapy historically has been interpreted as a self-ego oriented methodology, and therefore has come up and faced resistance from folks in the church, because if in the church the idea is that you're not the most important thing, God is the most important thing. And so the integration for me is highlighting the fact that they can coexist, that therapy is simply another tool that God uses in the earth realm to help his people be well. And if we didn't need people in the earth, God would have never created the earthen vessel to begin with, right? It's supposed to happen here in the earth for folks to multiply and replenish and dominate, right? And I'm of the opinion that therapy is an instrumental tool so that can happen.
So you mentioned roadblocks. So that was something I was going to ask you. So I belong to I belong to many communities, but there are three specific communities that I belong to that I believe have created roadblocks for me in seeking therapy. I belong to the Black community, and I say Black community because I believe that I see roadblocks in African American communities, African communities, which is where I belong, and then Caribbean communities. I see similar roadblocks in all of those.
Correct.
I see roadblocks in the immigrant community. I'm a child of immigrants. I was raised by African immigrants in the UK, and I myself am an immigrant to the US, and I'm also a believer, a Christian, and I see different roadblocks there. Could you speak to each of those different communities and some of the roadblocks you see to therapy and some possible ways that we can maybe overcome those roadblocks?
Absolutely. They're so intertwined, interconnected, and yet each one has a distinction, if you will. And so the Black community, probably the most controversial of them all, because what is that? Who is that? Who does that encompass? In this country, that generally means individuals with a darker skinned complexion whose ancestry is inclusive of enslavement. That's generally what we mean when we say Black, although many other people who don't share that same ancestry in the United States have similar historical experiences. And so for that community, when an individual has experienced systemic oppression, it is hard to yield to build or offer trust in that system.
Yeah.
And the reality is that therapy is a part of the healthcare system of this country, and it is seen as a part of that system.
Yeah.
And there are elements to the process of therapy that perpetuate a power differential.
Yeah.
And there are legitimate concerns for folks to be mindful about whether or not this is yet another means for oppression.
Yeah.
And so for the Black community, this mistrust of the healthcare system in this country is significant, it's real, and it is based on direct, pointable history, right? We could talk about the Tuskegee. We could talk about a number of things that have happened in this country that perpetuate mistrust in the healthcare system for Black people. Yeah. For immigrants, what I have found in working with that population is not drastically different, but one of the key differences is that for immigrants, they have made a decision. Someone in their family has made a decision to change the trajectory of their life, the quality of their life. And that included leaving a country or nation and coming here. Yeah. And that process is intense and can be very harsh for many people. And you don't do that well without a level of resiliency that is often seen as the strategy that will sustain in thriving. Yeah. And so what do I mean by that? An immigrant's goal is to shift from survival to thriving. Yeah. And unfortunately, oftentimes the skill sets that help us survive don't help us enjoy thriving. Yeah. And so this idea of like slowing down and unpacking and feeling is contraindicated. It is just contraindicated. You can't do that. You can't stop and lick your wounds when you're in a boat, trying to hide. You just can't do that. And not to be overly stigmatizing around the migrant experience. But that is the key feature that I have found, that there is a resiliency that is necessary, justified, and skills that come in the survival process that do not always translate well. Once a person has gotten to the goal that they were reaching for, it's a different set of skills and a different mindset is necessary.
Yeah. I know from my own experience, just looking at my mother, my grandmother, different relatives, and like mindsets that I've taken on, it's like therapy as an immigrant and as a Black person, to me, it's like a luxury. It's frivolous. It's like, you pick yourself up, you dust yourself off, you keep on going. That's the mindset. Absolutely.
And so you gave me a great segue to the Christian population. It is not very different. The language might be different. The ideas are not entirely different. Picking yourself and keep going. In the Christian population, it's not as much a pick yourself up language as, although that does show itself as well. It's more pray more. God, will never leave you. He'll never forsake you. And these are all very important things, right, for an individual to do. But we always seem to come up in each of these sub communities with an either or idea. It doesn't have to be an either or idea. Like, you need resilience, but you do need to unpack.
Yeah.
You should pray, but you should be slow, thinking about, like, what are you thinking about? And yet God is good, but he put you in the earth to do something.
Yeah.
So it's a co-laboring experience. So in the Christian community, I think the good challenge is getting individuals to buy into it doesn't have to be either or. Like, there's value in understanding who you are, understanding how you show up in the world, why you show up in the world that way, and evaluating what options are there for you to shift a little bit so you can actually be what you want to be while being a great Christian, while praying, while studying, while worshiping, while doing all the devotional things that are part of the discipline of Christianity. And they're not they don't exclude each other out.
Yeah. I remember my own experience as a young mother, suffering with like postpartum depression and feeling isolated from the world because my husband was out working and I was home at one point with 3 little boys, ages 6 and under. And I just remember thinking, if I can just pray more, if I can just worship more, if I can just attend church more, if I can just read my Bible more. And none of these things were really doing what I thought they should do. So then the next thought to me is, well, something's wrong with me internally,
Yeah.
And what I really needed was more community, more support.
Absolutely.
And perhaps, therapy, perhaps somebody to speak to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The goal around therapy, some people think like the therapist is doing something too.
Yeah.
The therapist is not doing anything to the person. The therapist is helping the person see their reality a bit differently.
Yeah.
And I always say, I hold up the mirror so you can see the blind spots.
Yeah.
And so, it's not just talking about your feelings, but it's also, why do you feel that way?
Yeah.
And is that feeling based on something legitimate, or is that based on something you assume? It's an unpacking of the reality of our emotions and our thoughts and our belief systems. There's some beliefs that don't always set us up to be healthy.
Yeah. So you mentioned about the mistrust of the African American community, the Black community, really. I think even as immigrants, when we come here, we see what's happening. We read about what's happening, we see what's happening, and we have similar mistrusts. What is the correlation between that mistrust and what I perceive, and maybe I'm wrong in my perception, to be the lack of Black therapists? Is that a misconception? Are they more than I think?
Hard to say. I'm not, because I can't necessarily quantify what you think. I know we have historically been underrepresented, as is true for all other industries.
Yeah.
Right? We are growing. Does the mistrust contribute to that? I'm not necessarily going to say the mistrust of the healthcare system contributes to that. What I will say is that I believe the history of systemic oppression may contribute to that.
Okay.
It is that absolutely a journey to acquire a professional degree of any kind.
Yeah.
And in this country, the structures that create those degrees are most likely not influenced by, informed by, consisting of us.
Yeah.
So, as with many other scenarios, Black people have to show up, right? And have to show up differently, have to be the model minority, have to find the resources to afford the process. You are a teacher, so I started out in education. And what made me stop was I could not afford the last year
Oh.
of school that would require me to be based at a school
Internship.
and not work.
Yeah.
I could not afford that.
Oh, wow.
And a similar experience is required for most professional
Yeah.
degrees.
Yeah.
You need to be able to be placed somewhere.
Yeah.
And oftentimes the level of commitment necessary for those placements require a financial sacrifice.
Oh, wow.
So for people who are already behind the eight ball, if you will,
Yeah.
financially, or already tapping into loans and so forth and so on,
Mhm.
Finding the means to be able to do those things, I believe, contributes.
Yeah.
It is increasingly changing as the loan structures
Yeah.
have become more accessible.
Mhm.
Unfortunately for many, though, as a completely different topic, they leave school with a great deal of debt.
Yeah.
And so I think the system in this country that perpetuates disproportionate pay rates for
Mhm.
people of color,
Yeah.
opportunities to gain access to higher institution, affordable, future planning, all of those things contribute to the disparity
Yeah.
in Black people showing up in
Mhm.
various professions,
Yeah.
and therapists are not excluded from that.
Do you know many Black male therapists?
Many?
Any?
I do know several.
Okay.
We have one on our team who is under my supervision. About 3 or 4 more come to mind. And so, yes, the answer is yes, I do. And those therapists are here in the Tampa Bay area.
Oh, good.
Absolutely.
Okay. That's good to know. I think I might have met a school psychologist who was a Black male, and that's it. I'm not sure. We talked a lot about community,
Mhm.
and the name of your business is the Collective Wellness Institute, and I've also seen the name Community Victory. Why did you choose these titles?
So when we initially started our business back in 2018, we had identified a slightly different demographic. And what we identified was that demographic needed a different level of hope, empowerment
Yeah.
in their lives. And we wanted to exhibit that we were here for that. A major strategy for our organization, for our business, is to serve our community.
Yeah.
And so it's a key guiding principle for us. And at that time, we thought it was appropriate to be in the name.
Yeah.
As you move and grow, and I'm sure you'll find this as well, as you go into your vision, you tweak it, you get clearer. And for us, we recognize that the demographic initially identified was not actually the demographic that we were best serving.
Yeah.
And so when we evaluated that, recognizing that for us, the folks that we served the best were working class, professional, entrepreneur individuals who are motivated to be at their best.
Yeah.
And who may have navigated some challenges in seeing the value, as you said, in therapy. And so we also recognize the importance of being in community, and we wanted to keep that idea.
Yeah.
And we also create space for other professionals, which is why I can say, yes, I know, for other, to make access easier for our community.
Yeah.
And so for us, we are a collective of mental health professionals, all focused in on the wellness for our community.
Yeah.
And because I absolutely love teaching other clinicians, we added the element of institute where people can come in and be trained.
Okay.
And so collective also embodies the community. Like you're getting well in a group, in a collective.
Yeah.
And that is how we finalize the updated name.
And you mentioned, we talked about grief counseling, you said marriage counseling. What other types of services do you offer here?
So our goal is to meet the needs of the family system as a whole. So we have individuals who work with children. We have individuals who are specifically trained in specific trauma methodologies. A lot of loss and transition. So not only bereavement, but transitioning from single to married, transitioning from married to divorce, transitioning from being at home with parents to being a young adult, transitioning from working for someone to being an entrepreneur, transitioning from married to widowed. Transitions.
Yeah.
Transitions. Weight loss.
Oh.
A number of my clients have undergone weight loss surgery.
Okay.
And that is an identity transition that a lot of people don't recognize. So I think our focus overall is in helping people do life the way they want to do it. And oftentimes the challenge is because they're in a transition that maybe they didn't anticipate was going to impact them that way.
Next time on the Sweet Mother podcast.
If an individual loses a mother or a loved one and they are struggling, that they are entitled to that is a normal experience, and that I personally would encourage them to not do it alone.
Yeah.
One of the things I heard you say earlier was you needed community. Yeah. We do. We are built to live in community. Whether you're extroverted or introverted is not the point. We are built to live in community. And so having a safe place to process the range of emotions that can and will take place when there is a loss of a significant relationship, whether that relationship was as desired as we would want it or not. We all need safety for that. And I think that's the thing that's most important.
Tune in next time for part 2 of this episode, where we'll address the multifaceted aspects of grief and loss, including the individualized nature of each person's grieving process and coping with missing a loved one during the holidays and other special occasions. For more information on Dr. Simmons and the Collective Wellness Institute, please check out the show notes attached to this episode. If you enjoyed this podcast, please don't forget to subscribe and perhaps even leave a review so we can continue to expand our reach and audience. If you have a comment or question about the show, you can email me directly at sweetmotherpodcast@gmail.com. If you'd like to hear more from me, check out my blog at medium.com/@SOKO. That's medium.com/@SOHKOR. You can also find me on Instagram at SOKO_rights. That's at SOHKOR_rights. Thanks for listening.